Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, I am joined by two members of the Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover podcast in Byron and Joe as we count down our top 10 draft day moments of all time. There's one moment that I thought of immediately when I was thinking about this episode, wanted to do this episode. The first thing meant in my head image-wise was that moment. Joe puts forward a animal-themed draft moment.
Yeah, so I'll go for one a little bit light-hearted. I think it should be the huge story that we found out that Bill Belichick wasn't actually the mastermind all along.
And Byron, myself and Joe make our top 10 list. Hope you guys enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. A little bit of a 2-week break, but we are back now to talk all things NFL. And today's episode is all about our top 10 draft day moments in history. As ever, your host, Andy Davis. And before we get on to our two guests that are joining the show today, on this day, back in 1967, five-time NFL champion and Pro Football / College Hall of Fame, Guy Chamberlain passed away age 73. And in 1998, NFL Europe kicked off its season. And in 2017, Tony Romo retired from the sport. And the likes of Grady Jarrett, Reuben Foster, Jalen Carter, and John Hanna were all born. Now, with me, talking to guests, my first guest, or both guests actually, are from the podcast Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. And our first guest, speaking of Tony Romo, big Romo fan, big Cowboys fan, back with us on the show is Byron. Byron, how are you?
Feeling older than I was 30 seconds ago, now that I know Tony Romo's been retired 8 years. Goodness, that feels like it was 3 or 4 years ago.
It really does fly by, doesn't it? And yeah, I mean, it feels like yesterday for me. That was watching. I remember going to watch. The first Super Bowl I watched in full was Patriots Falcons. That seems like only a couple of years ago. Now that was a similar sort of time in NFL. So yeah, crazy how fast it goes. Our other guest today is a newcomer on the podcast. His first appearance, also part of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover, is Joe. Joe, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. All excited. It's like the last big event for a while from the off season. So with the draft coming up and everything exciting, it's an exciting time to be in the NFL world and be a big fan.
And of course, talking of fan, you are a 49ers fan. So we'd like to ask all our guests the same questions. Why their team? So for you, Joe, why the Niners?
Yeah, so I started supporting them probably when I was at university. So I played 2010, 2011, that age. I just remember watching a late night Monday night game. It was 49ers Patriots, and I just knew I had to hate the Patriots. And the 49ers had that vaunted defense at that point, and they just were destroying them all across the line. And I thought, yeah, defense is my where I'm going to look most. So I chose them. So it was in between them and the Commanders, Washington of old with RG3. So it was a coin toss, and I think I made the right choice going the 49ers, especially the last 10 or so years. So I became a 49ers fan.
Fair enough. I mean, if you go on Commanders, you'd have had, 2 playoff wins in the last 5 years or so, whereas you had, 2 or 3 Super Bowl appearances. And yeah, obviously a lot more winning seasons than the Commanders maybe have had in the last 5 years. So today's episode is, once again, it's a top 10 list. And for those who aren't familiar right now, we do our top 10s where each guest, we rotate and give our best nominees for the top 10. And once we get our 10 compiled, we'll then try and make it from 10 to 1. So this is one that I'm looking forward to a lot. It's one I've been planning for a lot of months now, something I wanted to do. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have come up with. So Byron, we'll go to you first. Alphabetical order out of the 2. Name me your first nominee for the top 10 draft day moments in NFL history.
Yes, certainly. So I'm going to start with hopefully a nice feel-good story. 2014 NFL draft between Ahmad Dixon and Demetrius Rainey was the 7th-round pick of the St. Louis Rams. 249 was Michael Sam, the first openly gay player to be selected in the NFL draft. Especially looking back on it now, it felt like a real moment of progress. A huge moment of acceptance, never mind what John Gruden might have to say about it later. It just felt like a really cool, inclusive moment in kind of sport in American history. Widely celebrated, no backlash, and it feels like American politics have taken a hard right since then, sadly. But in its moment, I thought it was incredibly special. I don't know how directly it led to, but it led to Carl Nassib playing as an openly gay player as well in the NFL. And I don't think you can have enough of those high-profile, inclusive moments. So, yeah, I'll go with Michael Sam off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I would dread to think what will happen these days in social media world, where if he was drafted in 2023 or 2024, I guarantee a certain W word would be brandished around unfairly, and I think the comments on Instagram and TikTok would have been not the best. So I think it's a good time to have him to really come into league. I do fear that if he came to league these days, I'm fully aware that I realise that Carl Nassib came out fairly recently and he has a good reception. So I'm confident that he would have, if drafted today, he would have had a similar sort of nice feel good factor story. But sadly, I fear that maybe it wouldn't all be like that on social media. Let's just hope Joey Barton's not an NFL fan. Joe, over to you for your first nominee for the top 10 draft day moments.
Yeah, so this is one which happened, it's getting to 22 years ago now. And it's one of them like crazy things. Like if it happened now, I think it would get a lot more. I think it was big during the time, but it was absolutely bigger with the social media. Is the Minnesota Vikings taking way too long to make the pick. It sounded like they had a trade in place with the Ravens. They sent in right at the end. The Ravens didn't. And it cost them 2 spots where the Jaguars and the Panthers literally ran to the stage in order to jump ahead of them. So the fact that they were trying to trade down, that didn't happen. And then to lose 2 spots, it worked out in the end because the player they actually got was a Pro Bowler, and the Kevin Williams, the DT, actually worked out. Got the better play out of the 3. But just comically badly ran to not be having 15 minutes and not being able to get your pick in just blows my mind. And I just can't imagine if that happened today, what the reception and the what would happen if that occurred.
Yeah, I mean, there's not teams you would have sort of expected to happen more to than the Vikings. I think the only two really I can think of probably have more likely to be the Chargers and the Falcons. I think Vikings are a team that have repeatedly over the years had these unlucky moments and are seen as perennial losers. And I do feel like that would be definitely one, I think, especially going back to social media day, if it was done 2025, I think you'd get a lot of videos reacting to it. I think, the nearest thing you had to it recently has probably been, probably the Falcons picking Penix in terms of that pure anger from fans, I think, from how they reacted last year. I can just picture it now, TikTokers and Instagram people getting completely angry at it. So, way before my time, I'd have been 8 at the time, and not into the NFL at that point, but I'd love to have watched this live and just for the shock factor of what the hell's going on here. So that was actually one of the ones I had thought about. It was one of my sort of moments I had marked down, written down as sort of a one of the ones I wanted to nominate. And I think, Joe, everything you said was exactly what I found as well. And certainly one of the more infamous draft moments. And speaking of which, my first nominee I want to put forward happened a year afterwards in 2004. It is Eli Manning turning down the Chargers. Now, for those who are listening who maybe haven't heard of this story, maybe you're new to the NFL, or maybe you're just too young to remember what happened. But Eli Manning, time after time, said he wasn't going to play for the Chargers. What did the Chargers do? They picked him anyway, first overall. But in the end, they swapped him with the 4th overall pick from the Giants, Phillip Rivers. And from what I've read as well, I've read rumours, I read an ESPN report on this. Apparently, one of the main reasons they're alleging as to why Eli did turn down it was apparently the Manning family are quite close with Ryan Leaf, and Ryan Leaf told him a bunch of negative stuff about the organisation. And I think Archie Manning spoke openly about wanting to play for a team who was functional, which ironically think about how the Giants are now and how dysfunctional they are now, but back then they weren't. Turns out a real sliding door moments because Eli Manning had 2 Super Bowls, 2 underdog stories, and Phillip Rivers didn't really win any big games. So I would love to know what happened if there'd be no swaps and maybe the Rivers had stayed with the Giants and Manning had stayed with the Chargers. Would Manning have won 2 Super Bowls? So would he have won any playoff games with the Chargers? Would Rivers have won 2 Super Bowls? I don't know. It's one of those ones where who knows, because often it's where you land. And I think Rivers, if he'd been in a team with Michael Strahan, I know Stephen, you're on defense, a team with Manningham or Tyree catching miracle passes, maybe it would be the same thing. Who knows? Because Manning wasn't exactly a great quarterback in the regular season, but he was amazing in the postseason for the Giants and had 2 memorable playoff or Super Bowl wins. So, I think they've teased it for a while. Is this guy going to turn down this team? I think Caleb Williams was one. They were saying, is he going to turn down the Bears? There's talk of Joe Burrow. Is he going to turn down Cincinnati a few years ago? I don't know why. He's from Ohio. But, I think people like to, hope that it happens again just for the drama. But I don't think we'll see it again. I don't think for a long time.
Yeah, I'm curious with like the contracts now, like the rookies are like it's set rather than beforehand they could sign whatever. It felt like they had a bit more power coming into the draft. So yeah, I'd be curious if it ever happens again. It feels like players like, okay, this is who I'm going to. I know there was talk about Sanders this year, like probably a year ago when they thought he was going to go number 1 and whatnot. That could happen, but yeah, it would have to be a special kind of player under certain circumstance.
I think it'd have to be. I think maybe Sanders was still the number 1 overall pick projected this year, maybe because he does seem like he's very sure of himself, very confident, and why would you want to go to the Titans? But I think personally, most players have the opinion of I'll take whoever can take me, and also I think there's also talking of ego. I think some players want that thing on their CV or that sort of achievement of taking a bad team and making them good. I think that plays to a lot of NFL, particularly quarterbacks' heads. They want to be the guy that changes the franchise. So I think, I think a lot of players these days actually are happy to go to a bad team. Byron, back to you for your second nominee for our top 10 list.
Yeah, we're going back to when Tony Romo was still in the league, just 2016 NFL draft. We had the 2 quarterbacks scheduled to go number 1 and 2, and then after that it was kind of a whirlwind. And the top tackle was Laramie Tunsil until about 5 to 10 minutes before the draft, when his Twitter video showed a video of him smoking a gas mask bong with a Confederate flag behind him. A very unusual scene, yet to be repeated. Hopefully, will not be. Turns out, obviously, I think his stepdad was involved in hacking his Twitter account, was the rumor. But he ended up tumbling down the draft board. Ronnie Stanley went ahead of him. Jack Conklin went ahead of him, and he was tackle 1 coming into the draft. I think he could have went as high as even 3, really, to the Chargers, but ended up going 13 to your Miami Dolphins, who, maybe didn't end up winning anything for it, but my goodness, they won the draft that night, getting tackle 1 at 13, and to all accounts, he's never had any off-the-field issues since. To my knowledge, he doesn't have a gas mask bong on his residence at any point. So, yeah, and this again happened in the social media age when it was wild. The NFL and ESPN wouldn't comment on it live publicly because they didn't know what to do. So they just like, there's a off-the-field thing with Tunsil that we can't get into. But anyone who was on Twitter or social media knew exactly what had happened, or knew exactly what the video was. I mean, I don't think anyone really knew what happened. I don't think anyone thought Tunsil had posted it himself, because that would be career suicide, essentially. So, yeah, that stands out as like maybe the first huge moment, the viral moment of the social media age.
Yeah, and I think to go further than that, this is one of the ones I had as well, for the extra reason, as well as the fact that, Dolphins won the trade. Later on, we go and trade Tunsil away, and we got out of it Jalen Waddle, Javon Holland, and Tyreek Hill out of it. Or they sort of used... There's loads of different connotations, but I think the Dolphins benefit a lot from that moment, and I am very thankful that it did get leaked, because he's a very good servant to the team, and then when he leaves, we get a lot of capital for him and use it really wisely. And I've seen the team at the playoffs in 3 years out of 14. 2 of those years, Waddle and Hill were big parts of that. Well, were the main reasons why we got into the playoffs. So yeah, I definitely is helped in a little bit, helped towards getting some sort of success as a fan, even though I've never seen us in the 14 years ever win a playoff game. So I think this is the shock factor. I think it's I think the way it's going social media, the way we're seeing more and more leaks, I think this could happen again easily. Yeah. I think the fact that stepdad has gone involved is crazy. I don't know whether he wanted to try and get him a lower pick to go to a better team. I don't know, because you think about most of the best draft picks, most successful draft picks aren't necessarily the first top 10 picks. Think about Dan Marino was late, Aaron Rodgers, maybe more on him later on, but there's many quarterbacks that have gone. Joe Montana, I think, was one. He wasn't in the top 10, and you think about how many top talents actually go top 10 and actually win Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Not many, especially a quarterback or maybe tackle, maybe offensive line isn't quite as much. But again, the way the draft is these days, I mean, not many offensive linemen get taken at top 10. It's all about the quarterbacks and the receivers. So, yeah, this was a crazy one for me. I got into the NFL at this point, but maybe not the draft at this point. So again, I wish I watched this live.
Yeah,
this would have been amazing. But yeah, certainly an infamous moment. Joe, over to you for your next nominee for our top 10 list.
Yeah, let's go. I was going to say old, 1999. Can't really say that's too old. But yeah, and the memorable draft there is the Ricky Williams trade, which, when you look back at it, how much the Saints gave up. So yeah, Mike Ditka was enamored by the Heisman Winner Trophy. So they traded the 5th pick from Washington for their 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So all their picks in the 1999 draft, and also a 1st rounder and a 3rd rounder the year after in 2000 for running back. And I know running backs were seen differently, certainly back then compared to now. But even for a quarterback to basically give up everything for like one player is just nuts. It's many view it as the 2nd worst NFL trade, just under the Herschel Walker deal. So it was just created for a player who didn't stay there long and only had 1 Pro Bowl season, and that was with the Miami Dolphins in 2002. So it didn't even work out with the Saints. So to give up all that draft capital for one player, and then it doesn't work out, it was crazy move, and just a mind blowing. Like, again, imagine if that happened, just someone was like, oh, we're going to trade just for
you want Ashton Jenney.
For Ashton Jenney, and we're going to give every single draft pick this year and also our 1st and 3rd next year. Would just be I think the world would just crumble, and certain GMs and personnel would be getting fired straight afterwards if they did that kind of move.
Well, that 3-13 season that followed it was Mike Ditka's last of his career, so kind of fitting, yeah. I don't know if you'd get to coach the season if you tried to pull that trade. I think the owner would be like, whoa, Ashton Jenney's good, but come on.
We actually covered this trade in one of our last episodes, our top 10 worst trades in NFL history, and do check it out if you haven't already and find out who else made the top 10. But the stats actually aren't that bad. 3 seasons or 4 seasons, they had 2 1,000-yard seasons. But I think the fact that they lost a lot of games and he goes to another team, the Dolphins, and becomes arguably the greatest running back in their history. Certainly, it's him or Larry Zonka, I think, are the best 2 in our history. And I think to go and have, I think he had 1 season with something like 16 touchdowns, 1,800 yards. I mean, that is a phenomenal season. But again, it's not with the Saints, it's with the Dolphins. So, for all the hype, maybe didn't quite work out. My next nominee is not a trade, it's a moment of the day. And it goes by really a quote from 1994 with 5 words. Who the hell is Mel Kiper? I think this is when the draft started to get a bit more televised, a bit more attention, became a bit more than just a meeting in an office room, draft picks. So I've seen clips from years ago where the picks are just not exciting at all. It's very bland. You think about that infamous sort of 84 draft with Marino, Elway, and Kelly, and it just seems so watered down compared to the modern day NFL draft bonanza that it is, and taking it to different cities across the world, out in the public. I mean, Lambeau Field getting one this year, Nashville getting it along the main street. I think this is one where it started to get a bit more crazy, and I think this was around about the same sort of time that free agency started to become a thing. And in the end, to excuse the pun, I think the draft stock of the NFL draft has really risen after this moment. And it was, again, a lot of people, myself, weren't alive when this happened, but it involved ESPN's Mel Kiper, one of the most famous names when it comes to NFL draft night, and the Colts GM at the time, Bill Tobin. Mel Kiper felt that the Colts needed to draft a new quarterback, and they had the 2nd and 5th overall pick. Their current quarterback is now a head coach in the NFL. It was Jim Harbaugh was their current quarterback, but Mel Kiper felt they had to pick on prospects. Heath Schuler or Trent Dilfer, and they didn't get him. And in the end, Mel Kiper just absolutely slates the Colts for not taking him, not taking any of the 2 quarterbacks and sticking with Harbaugh. And then the quote, Tobin, he says, well, we got a guy up there. Who the hell is Mel Kiper anyway? I mean, here's a guy that criticizes everybody, whoever they take. He's got the answers, who you should take, who you should not take. And to my knowledge of him, he's never ever put on a jockstrap. He's never been a coach. He's never been a scout. He's never been an administrator. And all of a sudden, he's an expert. We don't have to take anyone that Mel Kiper says. We don't have to take. We have to take even. Mel Kiper has no credential to do what he's doing, more so than my neighbour, and my neighbour's a postman, and he has no season tickets to the NFL. So, yeah, quite the quote from Tobin there. And I think that for me was infamous. I think it just kickstarted the whole bonanza that it is today. So back to you, Byron, for our what that could be now our 7th out of 10 nominees of top 10 draft day moments.
Yeah, I'm going to go to got to go to the Brady draft, haven't you? Going to go Brady. That's right. 1995. Jets fans, we want Sapp. We want Sapp. We want Sapp. And the Jets decide, no, we want Kyle Brady, tight end out of Penn State. And there's been booing before at Radio City, at Madison Square Garden, at live drafts across the country as they've been moving around. But I don't think any have been quite as ferocious as the Jets passing on Warren Sapp to draft, God bless his heart, Kyle Brady, who was a fine tight end, but he certainly was no Warren Sapp Hall of Famer. Place eviscerated with boos. And yeah, Kyle Brady went on to have an okay career, and Warren Sapp went a couple of picks later and to the Bucks, and obviously instant Hall of Famer. So
yeah, this is one of my favorites. When I was thinking about this episode, I wanted to do this episode, the first thing in my head, image-wise, was that moment. And I think there's a great YouTube clip that you haven't seen already, is of the Jets fans' reactions they caught on camera, and you can see their face just turn when they say the name Kyle Brady, and they're like, they're just absolutely fuming. And there's we now got 6 tight ends, and it's just, there was so much there, and there's been a few picks over the years, especially nowadays, where you do get a lot of fan reaction. But back then, there's no camera phones, nothing like that, and it was live from the draft itself. It's just a glorious moment. And as someone who maybe isn't the biggest fan of the Jets, amazing to see. One of my favourite draft moments. Joe, to you.
Yeah, so I'll go for one a little bit light-hearted. I think it should have been a huge story that we found out that Bill Belichick wasn't actually the mastermind all along. It was his dog, Nike, who we saw during the virtual draft, looking like he was basically making the picks, reading the scouting report. And it was just like a humorous moment just when they just went during COVID, where they had all the cameras in the rooms, and just looking like that dog with Nike was making all the Patriots picks. I just thought that was great. Obviously, we have Charlie, Byron's dog, making picks this year. I'm guessing how his picks went, no teams would want him as his GM because he had a bit of a disastrous year. But no, I just thought it was a great moment, just seeing looking at a dog making picks for the New England Patriots organization.
You know, I really like that draft. I thought there was definitely a lot to like about it. I think the fact it was in Roger Goodell's house, you saw a lot more. Obviously, every pick was based in people's houses, and every pick was involving, family watching on. I thought this was fantastic. Kudos to Belichick's dog. Now, my next pick, I'm struggling because most of my first 6 picks have all been picked now, so I'm struggling to find. I've got a choice of, I'm going to go for one that again, we talk about fan reactions. A bit more of a modern one, a bit more recently biased, but I'm going to go for 2019, the Giants drafting Daniel Jones. Now, everyone talks about the Bears passing on Mahomes, but I think the main consensus back then was Trubisky being taken over to Deshaun Watson. And I think the fact that, straight away people were questioning the pick. I think there's been many picks that have turned out to be good and bad. Maybe people were thinking to be the other way, but I think this one, everyone knew straight away this was a terrible pick. 6th overall. I mean, the worst thing I think about this one is that, yeah, they could have got like sort of, you know, Josh Hines-Allen or TJ Hawkinson in the draft and before Daniel Jones. But there was no real great quarterbacks last year. But I think the worst thing for me, for them, is they could have waited a year and talked about lockdown draft. They could have got Joe Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Jordan Love, or Jalen Hurts. And one of them made the Super Bowl. One of them's played in 2 and won 1. So I think the Giants, it's an all-round silly pick for how Jones's career has gone. Only really one good season as a Giant. And, you know, and the fact that they really missed out a year later on getting, if they had a bad year again, they could have gone one of these quarterbacks. But the thing, I think, why I've wanted to include this is, again, the reaction. If you type in Daniel Jones reaction on YouTube, you get some amazing reactions. There's obviously there's the other Josh Hines-Allen, people saying he's going to wear a gold jacket, why have you taken him? And there's Giants fans falling to the floor. Daniel Jones, there's so many great YouTube clips. And I love this moment for many reasons. Right, we've got 9 out of our 10. Now, I'm going to let you guys, as the guests, I'm going to give you the honour of picking a 10th. Now, Joe or Byron, the floor is yours. Either of you can make your pick. I'm going to let you guys choose a 10th.
Should we submit one each, Joe, and then we'll pick between us?
Yes. So mine was just because we haven't really done this type of moment. It was Rodgers falling down the draft. Just because there have been moments where there's been players who looked like they were going to get the number 1 pick, and then they're there for 3 hours, and every single 5 minutes there's a camera in their face, and you just see them getting sadder and sadder and sadder. And there's quite a few examples of that, but I think Rodgers is the most famous one.
I'm happy to go with that. My honourable mention, we'll call it then, because I think we should go with Rodgers, was Johnny Manziel being drafted to the Cleveland Browns. Because, again, you want that instant moment. I remember Mark Sessler, he'd the call now around the NFL then, not being in tears as such, but they were sat at the draft with Dan Handus and Dave Damashek. And Mark Sessler's just like, oh my God, we've finally done it. We've got to be good again. And it's like, But, the hype around Johnny, I don't know if there's been a more electric player coming out of college football, just on like electricity, not necessarily a good player, but just like vibes. And the other one I would kind of throw in that same bracket would be 2010 Tim Tebow going in the 20s, when no one knew if he was going to go in the first round, the third round, somewhere in between. But again, in terms of pure hype and electricity, Tebow time, if you're watching college football, NFL, then it was unbelievable. Every Sunday, hashtag Tebow time trended, or every Saturday in college. But yeah, I'm happy to go with Rodgers because that was on my shortlist as well. But I just wanted to give those 2 a shout out of like electric moments.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll go with that then. And I think I want to give some quick shout outs to maybe other ones that I did think about. I mentioned it before, Bears trading up for Trubisky, getting him 2nd overall. And I think more for the shock factor. I think Jordan Love being drafted by the Packers in 2020, that was a great moment. Yeah. And also one that was, I think it was 2 years later, can't remember whether it's 21 or 22, was the AJ Brown draft day trade from the Titans to the Eagles. I remember there was a whole draft pick just made before, and then out of nowhere they spring upon us this. I mean, there was also the Hollywood Brown trade in the same day, but that's far less of a shocking trade, or maybe for the wrong reasons. But yeah, the AJ Brown one and what he's gone on to do with the Eagles, and he's won a Super Bowl, how badly the Titans have fallen since that trade, basically. Mike Vrabel leaving as well. That's what I wanted to give a shout out for. But we have our 10. So I went for Eli Manning turning down the Chargers in 2004. Who the hell is Mel Kiper in 94? And the Giants drafting Daniel Jones in 2019. Byron went for 2014, Rams drafting Michael Sam, the Jets turning down Warren Sapp and taking Kyle Brady, much to the delight of the fans, as well as the Laramie Tunsil draft slide, whereas Joe went for the Vikings 2003 missed pick, the 1999 Ricky Williams trade, and Bill Belichick's dog, and Rodgers falling down the draft. Now, we only got a quick 5 minutes left of the episode, but we're going to quickly try and get our top 10 list from 10 to 1. Now, any sort of picks out of these top 10 that they feel shouldn't be outside top 5? Any ones that you think, right, these ones have to be in top 5 somewhere?
Mel Kiper should be top. somewhere very high, because that is, like you say, that launched the draft into a new stratosphere.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel like Manning has to be in the top 5 somewhere, so I'm going to have that as my sort of opposite veto to have him in the top 5. Absolutely. Joe, anyone picks that you think should be in top 5?
I said let's go the Tunsil one because I think that's the biggest one in the last few years. Especially that's one of the first drafts I got into as well, and that was such a huge moment to happen. Right, literally 10 minutes before, and it was just like a big story on the night. When it's like when it's not like just football and what kind of picks they are. So I would say that's got to be a top 5. I'm happy for Belichick dog as well to be in the bottom 5. That's fine. I'll accept that.
We'll try. Tell you what, we'll put that 10th just because it's the first one we said that we happy to put down in the bottom. I'm happy to have Daniel Jones in the bottom 3, bottom 2 because I feel like there's definitely more shocking moments. Anyone you feel, Byron, that you'd maybe like to be happy to see go down later on in the table?
Not hugely. I think it's pretty strong. I agree with those 2 that you've just said. I don't want to be a bit rough to Bill Belichick's dog, but wasn't very much intended. Yeah, I think the rest are all pretty. You could bunch them all. Like I said, Mal Kiper and Eli, I think, should be right at the top. But then I don't know if I have a strong preference otherwise. Maybe Ricky Williams lower down.
That should be higher, in my opinion. That should be maybe not like top 5 or 6. I don't know. I don't think it should be in the bottom 5 either.
I think the Warren Sapp one should be lower just because it's the Jets and they always get a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, and we've had other booings as well. Donovan McNabb took a pasting for the Eagles fans as well. Right, okay. Yeah, I'm happy for that to go 8.
It's put Warren Sapp 8, and that was 1995. Okay, so then we've got a choice, really, I think, of Michael Sam, Vikings miss pick, Ricky Williams trade, and Rodgers falling down the draft to pick, I think, next out the 4th. I think we got our top 2, our top 3. So really 4, 5, 6, 7. We got those 4 to choose from.
I would lean Rodgers as the next one.
Okay, yeah.
Because of who Rodgers went on to become as well. I know it's like the moment in itself, but like it's more memorable than Brady Quinn because Aaron Rodgers became Aaron Rodgers, whereas Brady Quinn became Brady Quinn. And like you forget about it easier. Whereas Aaron Rodgers falling to 24 is staggering. And it was at the time.
You know what? I think I hate to do this, but I think maybe put Michael Sam 6th. I think it's obviously an amazing moment, really nice moment. Maybe there was more shocking moments in the draft.
And we knew he was going to get drafted.
Okay.
You know, so like, yeah, I'm happy with it 6th because like the moment in itself was special, but it wasn't like out of nowhere. Yeah, so I agree with that.
So that means we've got Manning, Mel Kiper, Ricky Williams, Larry Tunsil, Vikings miss pick, and is there one more? Or that
should be somewhere.
I got Belichick 10th, Daniel Jones 9th, Warren Sapp 8th, Rodgers slide 6th, Michael Sam 6th. So I think we've got that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we got our 6 there. So I'm going to go Vikings miss pick, I think 6th, just because I think, 5th, because I do feel like the other ones were mentioned earlier about ones we can't have outside top 5. So maybe have that as the 5th. That means then we've got, we've got Ricky Williams, Larry Tunsil, Manning, and Kiper to pick from in our top 4. Anyone there you feel you could have outside top 3? Because I think they're all very valid selections in our table.
What was the third one? Sorry, Mel Kiper, Eli Manning, and what was the last one?
Ricky Williams and Larry Tunsil.
I'll put Williams below the other 3.
That's good as me. Put him 4th. I'm happy to have the lead on that one. And then that means Larry Tunsil, who the hell is Mel Kiper, and Eli Manning.
I think just reverse the order. So I was like Eli first, Mel Kiper 2nd, the other one 3rd.
Tunsil 3rd, yeah.
Tunsil 3rd.
Yeah, do you reckon? Like, that was my top 2 were Manning and Kiper. So that for me is perfect if that's done that way because that means I've had the top 2. But I'm good with that if you guys are good with that.
Yeah, and I think as well, we didn't mention it, Eli Manning like refusing to touch the Chargers jersey as well. It was
Oh my God.
It was incredible. Because I was thinking I want Mel Kiper at number 1, but like the more I think about Eli Manning's face and just his pure disdain at the fact they did it, I think I'm very happy with that as number 1, actually.
Well, there we are. Our top 10 list is complete. So just to recap, from 10 to 1, it's Bill Belichick's dog stealing the show in 2020. Number 9 is Daniel Jones' pick from the Giants in 2019. Number 8 is Warren Sapp's pick to the Buccaneers in 1995. Number 7 is Aaron Rodgers' slide in 2005. Number 6 is the pick of Michael Sam in 2014. Number 5 is the missed pick from the Vikings in 2003. Number 4 is the 1999 trade for Ricky Williams by the Saints. Number 3 is the 2016 Laramie Tunsil slide. Number 2 is the 1994 Mel Kiper, who the hell is Mel Kiper quote. And number 1, our top draft day moment, is the pick of Eli Manning by the Chargers in 2004. But there we are. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And if you have got anyone you feel we should have included, we missed out on, do let us know in the comments on whatever platform you listen to. Otherwise, thanks to Byron and Joe for coming on today.
Thanks for having us, Andy.
Yeah, cheers, Andy.
No problem at all. And before I forget, we aren't doing tennis. That wasn't April Fool. So don't get your hopes up, those who are maybe who got their hopes up and didn't see the follow-up post. And of course, don't forget, if you haven't before, check out Joe and Byron's work on Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover podcast. In the meantime, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our top 10 draft day moments in NFL history. I've been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today in Byron and Joe. And we'll see you guys next time.